Hey groupers, Pastor Marshall here. We want to talk about mentoring. Before we get into that, on my message on Sunday, I talked about this principle. When we do something in the wrong context, we create a distraction, and that distraction creates an embarrassment. And I told you funeral story from Claudia's grandmother's funeral and my sister-in-law, and well, I wonder if you have any stories that match this principle. Wrong context equals distraction, and the result is an embarrassment. And just to break the ice, let's just get everybody talking, and maybe you would tell a story. And then after you've done that, in Titus, the Apostle Paul divides Titus's church into 4 groups. He talks first about older men, and then he talks next about older women. And then he talks to the younger women. And finally he talks to the younger men. And I am not stupid, and so I'm not going to put any of you in a box. You get to decide which box that you are in. For those of us that are in the older men box, yes, and I'm struggling to say that, but I accept that. Those of us that are in the older men box, Paul talks about being temperate, and that means that we have seen a decrease in our need for passion. How have you seen a decrease in your need for passion? And then Paul talks about being respectable. How do you try to practice being deliberate, but not being gloomy? It's easy for older men to be gloomy when they're trying to be deliberate. How do you try to be deliberate, careful, but not be gloomy? And then Paul talks about being respectable. And then Paul talks about being self-controlled. When he talks about being self-controlled, he talks about how do we take our thoughts under control. When our thoughts want to go different places, how do we take them under control? And just for a second, let's talk about this self-control, because we're going to see this same conversation show up again and again. And so what Paul is talking about is that we are beginning to control our thoughts. Our thoughts are not controlling us. Well, then Paul talks to the older gals. And what does it mean to be a priestess for God? What does that look like? Those of you that would put yourself in the older gal box, what does it look like to be a priestess for God in your life? Do you think that you are winning, older gals? Do you think that you are winning or losing the slander battle right now in your life? If you were just to look at the last week or two, how did you do when it comes to the slander battle? And then, do you think that many people would criticize your relationship with alcohol? Would an outsider criticize your relationship with alcohol? And then, we talked about older women have a unique place in society, and that is that they can teach all of these categories. They can teach into any one of these boxes. And so, older women, who are you teaching right now? Well, then Paul talks about younger gals, and he says that younger gals need to seek wise counsel. Younger ladies, who are you seeking wise counsel from right now for navigating life? Paul talks about loving your husbands and loving your children. Would you be transparent right now in your group? Which are you having an easier time with right now, and which are you finding it more difficult? Is it easier for you to love your husband right now in this season of life, and you're struggling to love your children to the same level? Or are you loving your kids to a great level, but you're struggling to love your husband to that level? And then Paul talks about being deliberate but not gloomy. So younger women, this self-control that was for the older men, this comes into your box. And so how do you practice being deliberate but not gloomy? And finally, Paul says that younger women are supposed to be pure. What is your definition of pure? This is a unique word here for the younger women. What do you think that it looks like to be pure as a younger woman? And then finally, Paul talks to the younger men, and he says that we're supposed to take our thoughts captive. This same conversation comes into younger men's lives. Younger men, how do you try to practice self-control with your thoughts? And how have your morals changed, matured in life so far? Paul talks about integrity. How has that happened? And then, how do you try to practice being deliberate but not gloomy? Again, he talked about older men being respectable. It's the same idea that younger men would be, that we would have this deliberate but not gloomy lifestyle. And if someone was going to use your life to pick at the church, younger men, this is a unique thing that he says to Titus. If someone was going to use your life to pick on the church, how would they pick on the church through your life? Well, I'm challenging us to sign up for a conversation with someone in a different generation. Have you signed up yet? That's our application for the week. I hope that you have, and I look forward to seeing you next Sunday for week 50 in Core 52. We're almost done. God bless.